they do it, you got to target, you got to hit. And so you got.
Because I see myself in the front seat, so I see myself in the driver's seat. So
start. I remember. No, not yet. Well, I haven't checked.
This is the thing that I've said. Like, we've seen her video and we've seen this video, but we've never seen what he was actually doing to make the officer think that he was reaching for something.
Right.
They came out.
And what's crazy? And that's the piece that we don't know. Right. And until you see that,
ever since then,
because we are live.
Yeah.
Oh,
hi.
Ever since for the second charge.
Oh.
How, Sway? How? That's the question of the night. How, Sway? Let's see.
The mic is hot.
Did you hear that? Ooh.
A wee boy. In the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight. Nope. Yes. Yes.
Too much.
Very much so. Too soon.
Just went over the line.
Absolutely.
Hey, that's Pops right there. That's like my dad right there. That boy right there crazy, just like me.
Who is Gene?
Yeah. Casanovas son, the one that got caught shooting the thing apart.
Yeah. Facebook Live, what's going on? Share this with your friends, share this with your families. We have a show for you tonight. Tonight is going to be interesting. We want to hear your comments. We want to hear your thoughts. We're about to have a very lively conversation, I believe.
What's up, Ice?
Idris, what's up, Icy?
I feel a little nervous.
Yeah, you feel that too, huh?
I'm super
The
nervous.
pit of my stomach is doing
I'm really
me.
sick to my stomach, actually.
Yep.
I'm really sick
For
to
those
my
who
stomach.
have tuned in so far, hold your horses. We got a good show. You got one for you. Got one for you.
I don't know if good's the word.
I mean, we got one for
What's up, AC?
Because we have this platform. This is a show we have to have.
Of course.
Absolutely, we have to have this conversation.
Absolutely.
But boy, I ain't gonna lie.
This is gonna be tough.
This one tough.
Man, that man got a murder charge facing, bro. Let me tell you something.
Be a good time for some angel wings.
This would be a great time for angel wings. Justin, if you are watching,
I'm not even hungry.
somebody.
I can't eat. I don't know how you guys could eat after.
I mean,
Watching
afterwards,
somebody die? I'm sorry.
you after the funeral.
You're trained to do that.
After the funeral, you gotta have something to eat.
I'm
Yeah,
not
sure.
gonna lie. I mean, somebody out there wants to tear up somebody's flesh for this nonsense, so you
Thank
may as
you.
well eat some chicken.
Yep.
There you go.
I don't
There you go.
understand the logic in that statement, but, you know.
I think it's the difference between the male, like,
I guess.
mind.
Shawnee, what's going on? Yo, you got any new music, Shawnee? We need it. Send it to us. Wee.
I already find this title kind of ironic.
Yep.
Strange.
The Unchurched series.
Welcome to Freethinkers Radio. I'm Ebony Dixon, the baby jumper, your host.
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, J. Will.
Good evening, everybody. It's JB Sampson.
Hey guys, this is Beth.
Chris MC Raymond Davis.
Justin Thomas Williams.
Antjuan, I'm here. Seawright. Hey, everybody, it's William. Yeah.
That was
Stand up, baby. You know what I'm saying? Oh.
That was David Pendergrass
That was
for everyone
the
to know. Tonight, we're going to be talking police conduct and justice. And in a few minutes, we're going to show you the police dash cam that was released during the Philando shooting. It's graphic content. It's graphic verbiage. So if you have any young ones you don't want to see the video, then please don't watch it.
Ebony, we're gonna be talking open fire season.
We're going to be talking about police conduct and justice. So stay tuned and feel free to think freely.
This first song is rather appropriate. It's called Arrows by Jimmy Needham.
Yep. This is one of those shows, everybody. So get ready. Facebook Live, talk to us. If you have any questions, any thoughts, let us know. Share this show with your friends, your family. We have a very diverse panel, so I want to hear your thoughts as we hear their thoughts, your comments. We're gonna be talking. Tune in.
You know it's about to get real.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a joke for that.
I ain't had much to say for that one. Yeah.
Open fire season, man. That's what it is.
And I'm in the middle. This is just not right.
Never find that dude.
Let me move where I can get through the wall if I have to.
I'm coming too.
Trust me, I'll make a big enough hole.
But bro out there, boy. It is more fun on this side of the table.
Oh yeah, it's
So what
pressure.
do you used
on
to do,
him.
man? You used to be a cop.
I used to be a cop.
Okay. What department?
It was Richland County Sheriff's Department.
Okay, awesome. One of my best friends is a cop.
What's his name?
Teddy Clark. Well, he's a special agent for Department of Army.
Don't know.
Yeah, he's federal. He's in D.C.
When did you leave the sheriff's department?
Huh?
When did you leave?
A couple years ago. Yeah.
We usually have jokes right now. This is rough, man. I ain't gonna lie to you. Pressure is real today.
It's just.
Hold up.
The pressure is real.
And
Remember,
You left
your
with that?
discretion is advised. This is graphic in nature, content, and verbiage. So, yeah. Stick with us.
Again, we have Chris Davis with us, who used to be a police officer, and we have Mr. Justin Williams, who is an attorney, and Antjuan Seawright, Democratic strategist.
Hey, man. Today I'm just here as a concerned citizen. A person of color. A
Which
young
is why
black
he's
male.
in sweatpants and not a suit, right?
Joggers. For the culture. For the culture, Beth. For the culture.
I can only be me, you be you, and then we learn from each other, right?
That's
What it's all about. Each one reach one. Teach one too.
So we're trying to get the video together for the Philando shooting, the police dash cam. We do want to continue to warn you of the graphic content and the graphic verbiage.
These are the people protecting us.
Good. How are you? Good. Reason I put George, your brake lights are out. So you only have one active brake light, and that's going to be your passenger side one. Your third brake light, which is up here on top, and then this one back here, is going to be out. You have your license and insurance?
I do have a firearm on me.
Don't reach for it then. Don't pull it out. Don't pull it out. Don't pull it out! Don't move! Fuck! Fuck! 921, get up! 903! Shots fired! Fuck! Call 3!
We got pulled over for a busted tail light in the back. And the police, he's scared. They took my boyfriend. His license, he's carried the license to carry. He was trying to get out his ID and his wallet out his pocket. And he let the officer know that he had a firearm and he was retrieving the wallet. And the officer shot him.
Man, just keep your hands where they are! Fuck! I told him not to reach for it! I told him to get his hand open! Just keep your hands where they are, please!
Four bullets into him, sir. He was just getting his registration, sir.
Get the female passenger out!
Ma'am, exit the car right now with your hands up. You see your hands. Exit now. Keep them up. Keep them up. Where's my dog? Stop my dog. They me and walk backwards. Walk backwards. Walk. Walk.
6910, one adult, 6921, I'm sorry. One adult female, getting taken into custody. Driver at gunpoint. Juvenile female child is with 6920. We need a couple other squads, block off the intersections, get supervisors here. Page them out. What do you need, Mark? Keep his hands, let's just wait.
This is the part that I was.
Okay. To see both his hands, I need somebody, let's get gloves on.
Our all officers up.
Okay.
Our all officers good.
Okay.
Our all officers good.
All officers are good. We need it pulled into park.
I'm going to take your spot. I'm going to take your spot. Listen. I'm going to take your spot, buddy. Listen. I got your spot, okay? I got him. I got him here.
You got him?
I got him, buddy. I got him here.
Yeah.
All right? You right? You're not hit any area.
Oh, I'm not. Fuck it in.
Walk back here.
Control everybody.
You didn't get hit.
Yeah, I got it. Fucking A, dude! I told him to fucking stop me at his hand out!
That sounds like a dude. CYA?
Fuck! Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh, dude! Fuck! Let's get some more squads here so we can fucking block off everybody over there. Ah!
We got that blocked off down there. We got it blocked off here. Someone move a squad up alongside over there. Move a squad up. Block that.
What location are you at that you have it closed?
We're at Marvin and St. Mary, just after Raleigh.
Since 180, can you advise on that? If they still need the traffic closed off there?
Traffic blocked off. Can we get a
Copy. We're going to keep all the traffic blocked off here.
Are you able to move the squad up so they're not all filming
I'm
across?
fucked up right now.
Maybe mine or something?
I need you to just breathe. Okay? Breathe. Which direction did you fire your weapon?
Right at the driver, I had it right out.
Okay.
I had it pointed down. I don't know how many rounds I let out or anything.
Okay. So you were, I just need to know which one's your car right here.
Mine's the one that's pulling them over.
Okay. So you pointed just directly ahead of
Just directly, I had it at my waist.
him. Was he sitting in the car or was
He was sitting in the car, seat belted. I told him, that's your license. And then told me he has a firearm. I told him not to reach for it. And when he went down to grab, I told him not to reach for it. And then he kept it right there. And I told him to take his hands off of it. And then he had his grip a lot wider than a wallet.
Okay.
And I don't know where the gun was. He didn't tell me where the fucking gun was.
Okay.
And then it was just getting hanky. He was just staring straight ahead, and I was getting fucking nervous. And then I told him, I told him to get his fucking hand off his gun.
Okay. Okay. Is everybody in custody? Do we have everybody? Were there two people in the car?
3 people in the car. It was a female front seat passenger, the little girl in the back.
Breathe. Breathe in.
And the dude.
Okay.
We have just watched a good portion of the police dash cam when Philando was shot at point blank range. We did have a warning of the graphic content and verbiage. Chris, with you being a former police officer, I would like to start with you. What is the procedure when you pull someone over and have to draw your weapon?
Generally, we try our best not to draw our weapon unless it is what we consider a felony car stop. In that case, from the video I saw, he was stopping the guy pretty much to tell him he had a, tail light out. In most cases, what an officer would do is get license registration, go back to his patrol vehicle, verify the subject does not have any warrants, give him a warning, and send him on his way. From what I saw, where the issue came in is he identified that he had a firearm, which is what you are instructed to do if you have a CWP. And from that point, what I gather from the audio and from what I saw, the subject reached, I'm assuming he was reaching for his driver's license. I don't know. And the officer told him to stop reaching. At that point, the officer drew his weapon and started firing. I did not see what the officer saw.
Right.
I can't say whether the gentleman had his hand on his weapon or his wallet. I don't know. The only thing I can tell you is based on, I know South Carolina state law as far as what we teach as CWP instructors, and pretty much just plain and simple smart, if an officer tells you not to move if you've already identified you've got a weapon, you kind of need to stop. Because he could take that as if you are trying to do him some bodily harm. I'm not making a judgment call because I haven't seen what the officer saw. But there are a lot of officers who get shot, and we want to go home to our families too.
Right.
So I guess I could say that it's real easy to sit back and look at a video and examine, when you've got You looked at it, you go, okay, yeah, well, he could have did this, he could have did that. But when you're the person in the situation and you don't know what that subject is thinking, you don't know. And, you know, that's just a tough situation.
I think that, but that's the reason that, just like, I mean, you know, people put cheese on my burgers at restaurants too. It happens, right? But it's, how do you know what I'm saying? But I know that person has to answer to somebody.
Correct.
You see what I'm saying? And so that my of course I hate seeing that video.
Right.
But at the same time, I also know that how that ended. When you talk about accountability, when you talk about whether or not that can happen randomly, or whether or not what's the chance of that happening again, you know what I'm saying? Our justice system is supposed to make sure that there's a reason that I don't go out and shoot everybody I don't like.
Right.
Right? Because I know that they're not going to say, did you feel, you know, if I can't just say I felt like my life was in danger.
Right.
I can't just say I felt like it was the right thing to do. You see what I'm saying? So I'm just trying to figure out, how does an acquittal come out of that situation?
But here's the thing, David. You're talking about a justice system. A justice system cannot fail anyone it was never designed to protect. Quoting from W. Du Bois, I'm paraphrasing. And that's what we've seen. This is not an example of a shooting. This is murder. This is plain, flat-out murder. I don't care how you try to cut the tomato. Now, the court system said something different, but anybody in their right mind would have seen what we just saw, and that was flat-out murder. We teach our children the proper procedures when the police stops us, etc. This is not our first rodeo. We had Minnesota, we had Oklahoma, we had Charlotte, we had all these killings that have happened. I say killings and murders because that's what they are. This is not the first rodeo. If you're looking at me, but maybe I'm just a crazy young country boy from Swansea who lives in Lower Richmond, but I don't think he did anything wrong. I mean, he told the guy he had his gun. He didn't say he was reaching for his gun. He just kept reaching. And then if you look at the officer's statement, when it was all said and done, it came out last week. First, he said he stopped him because of a taillight. In his statement, he talked about the smelling of weed coming from the car. Okay, cool. Then he said in his statement, his nose was wide and fit the description of a robbery. So which one is it? So here's the reality. Right now, some mother on Mother's Day next year will not have her son. This country is praying for another black boy who will no longer be able to possibly be the second black president of the United States. That's what we're dealing with. Every single day of the week, that's what we're dealing with.
I understand where you're coming from, but my only thing is we've seen Diamond's video and we've seen this video, but the part we have not seen was what he was exactly doing for the officer to think that he was reaching for something. There was something that was going on for him to think that, but we don't know. We don't have that piece of the puzzle to say if he was reaching or not.
We don't, but what the officer clearly said was he looked as if he was reaching for something wider than a wallet. Now, let's use common sense for a second, right? If you're standing outside of a car and someone's sitting in the car and they're reaching down, how in the Sam Hill you know how wide somebody's reach is? I mean, if you're backed out the car and you got your gun like this, how can you say somebody's reaching for something like this? And wallets come in all shapes, forms, and sizes.
He also said that the guy wouldn't tell him where it was. So how did he know that the guy was reaching?
Yeah, he never asked him, where's your gun? Where's your gun located? I've seen cops say, if somebody tells them they have a concealed weapon, they say, well, for your safety and my safety, can you please step out the car so I can see, and I can see what you're reaching for. That's a safety training I've seen a lot of cop officers go through. That didn't happen here.
I also didn't see any denial of the guy saying, I never heard the question of where is the weapon. I never heard that question get a denial. So you know what I'm saying? So for me, you know what I'm saying, most of my time was spent after what everybody else was watching was listening and watching the officer talk to his supervisor. And when I heard what the officer said to the supervisor, that's what I'm going off of. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying?
And David, let's not all fool ourselves. This was not the first time this young man had been stopped in the great state of Minnesota. Mm-hmm. I think it was plus 9 times that he had been stopped before. So this wasn't the first time a cop has stopped him for pretty much doing nothing, like plus 9 times.
I'm hearing several things as we discuss this issue, and I think it may be healthy for the listeners and for the panel to sort of break them down into component parts. I think the first issue is, why was Mr. Castile stopped? Mm-hmm. Number one. Number two, why did his traffic stop end up in such a violent manner in his death?
Mm-hmm.
And number three, why did the jury find the defendant not guilty? If we look at while he was stopped, I definitely think this was a pretextual stop. There was a report of a armed robbery or some type of robbery in the neighborhood, and you know this, sir.
Right.
Law enforcement officers are charged with enforcing the law, and they use the law as a tactical mechanism in order to do their jobs. So was that officer so concerned about the public safety that he stopped Mr. Castile because he had a traffic light out or he had a tail light out? I don't know. I'm not in his head, but I would argue that the traffic, the broken tail light was his probable cause for the stop so he can investigate a potential robbery. Right. That's number one. So when we talk about policing in our country, whether it's Minnesota or anywhere, we have to ask ourselves, have we given the police too much power? Now, I don't know the answer to that question, but that was a pretextual stop, in my opinion. There was something that he was looking into, and he used the traffic light, or I keep saying traffic light, he used the tail light as a reason to get into the car. The second issue I think we all have is the fact that he killed Mr. Castile.
But Justin, going back to the first point, this wasn't the first time he stopped. Now, I asked cops after this happened. I said, so when you're behind the car, before you even get, what do you do? And you know what most of them told me? You may have done a little different. They say, we are running the tags as we are approaching the car. So we have the tag in our purview. So then we call it in and start running the tags before we even get out of the car. Cool. So naturally, they run the tags, they find out who it is, and you know how this stuff goes. You're a cop. They probably said somewhere in the system, or we've pulled him over before, or somewhere in the CB, somebody saying, breaker, you know, this could be him, blah, blah, blah. You know, this could be him. And then the robbery's going on, and then according to the cop's statement, when he got up on the car, his nose fit the description of a possible robber. Well, I mean, he obviously, I don't know many people, even when I was a kid and I took cookies out of the cookie jar, that owned up and confessed when I did something wrong. So I'm not going to judge the man for that. What I'm saying, though, I think this is larger than that individual. Obviously, this is a nationwide problem.
Absolutely.
I think the question is, as citizens, if we're going to look at, you know, why he was stopped and the reasons that he was stopped so many times, a question we have to ask ourselves is whether or not we have given the police too much power. You know, I don't know the answer to that question, but to me, someone with a gun, an aspeton, a taser, handcuffs, and mace, and whatever, you know, law enforcement is outfitted with, I don't think you need to be doing other things than stopping people for taillights, in my opinion. That's my opinion. I mean, you look at Walter Scott, taillight. You look at some of these other incidents that have occurred. The people who have been killed by the police that we've seen televised or recorded through some camera, I can't remember if any of them have ever been felony stops. Now maybe they have been, but in Oklahoma, in Minnesota, with Walter Scott, I'm just naming 3. I don't think those were felony stops. I know for a fact with Castile and with Scott, they were all traffic stops.
Right.
So the question becomes, why is it in America that a citizen ends up dead? An American citizen who's supposed to be protected by the Constitution ends up dead after a traffic stop. Well, and I think if we don't, and that may seem simple, that may seem real simple, but if we don't break this down into component parts, it's easy just to get frustrated with the entire process and not really have any answers. But I think we have to ask ourselves that question: why is that?
Well, the reason the nation is on edge, Justin, is because this continues to happen to black and brown boys.
Well,
I
disagree.
Well, that's just fact.
Like I agree with what Justin's saying. I think it's, for me, with this situation, obviously it's tragic. It's horrible. It's pretty horrific for both sides. You know, police officer's going to have to live with what he did for the rest of his life. He's probably going to have to relive that every night he goes to sleep, for the known future. The family has lost their child, father, whatever, whoever that person was to them. I think how I interpreted the situation is more specifically in regards to what is the role of the state or federal level of legislation. I don't necessarily see it as a problem of police officers, having too much power. Or I think, like, what are the laws? Like, legally, what are the laws? why should a busted taillight be an actionable offense? Why are people getting pulled over for a taillight? Why are people getting arrested for having marijuana? You know, what, and this is coming as a libertarian. I believe in limited government. If you believe in limited government, really, ideally, according a big source of inspiration for my political theory, and in regards to just the role of law, is a short book. It's free online. You can read it. It was written in the 1800s by a Frenchman. His name's Frederick Bastiat, Bastiat. It's called The Law. And really, it explores what is, it's one of the foundational things that goes into the creation of.
What are you talking about? Why is there a police force?
But no. I'm talking about what is the role of law. And as I see it, and as the Constitution has basically framed itself around this idea, the role of law is to protect and prevent against force or fraud. Anything else is superficial and unnecessary.
Let me put a pin drop right there, my man. You can have smaller government, you can have limited government, and all the talking points you want to use from a libertarian perspective. But at the end of the day, if government and law enforcement are not fair and balanced, I could give a flying kite.
But when
because
they have too much,
the truth of the matter is, black and brown boys and girls are targeted more.
Anybody's targeted when the government has power.
I'm giving you factual information that's been done.
You're trying to make race an issue when it's not.
Because it's
the problem.
Issue.
The problem is the law.
Listen, you know why it's an issue? Because Senator Tim Scott, a Republican senator from South Carolina,
like the larger level, the bigger
well,
picture.
Hold on.
Fundamental.
Fundamentally, the system is jacked up when it comes to black and brown people.
I think one thing is we have a perceived notion of who's violent and who's not violent, because you see, even in the way media portrays African American citizens versus a white boy, it could be the same age, same bill. One can be seen as a misfit kid who's just causing issues, while the other one is a grown man who's aggressive. And this is not just, I'm not saying this from my opinion, I'm saying this is how media portrays it. This is how, when a lot of times when police officers approach a young black man, this is how they speak to him. They speak to him as though you're the aggressor. Even if you're trying to stay calm, a lot of times they're spoken to as the aggressor.
So we're fooling ourselves for anybody to believe that black and brown boys and girls are not more targeted.
Can I say something?
That's factual information.
Yes, you can.
Can I say something?
Yes, you can.
Let me say, from a police perspective, who is a black officer who has been treated differently in uniform and out of uniform. Mm-hmm. Because I'm black, I grew up black, I grew up in the South.
You still black.
So yeah. But and I've been stopped by the police out of uniform. And when I saw the blue lights, my interior light came on. I brought my vehicle to a stop. I placed my hands on the steering wheel. When they walked up to my vehicle, I said, I have a gun with me. I had told them where the gun was. When they asked for my driver's license and registration, I said, would you like to get it? Or do you want me to get it? Because I understand, yes, I can get shot. I've also been on the other side of it where I've stopped people and they're acting like a fool. And I've seen a gun in the car.
Yeah.
And so on the flip side, I mean, I'm black. Like I said, I grew up this way. I can't change that. I don't want to change it. I enjoy who I am and I enjoy who God made me. But on the same token, every officer who shoots somebody is not murder. And it really bothered me because when you say murder, murder means a person premeditated it. I don't believe from what I saw that was murder. I believe the officer may have acted incorrectly, but he may have acted on impulse. However, murder means he intended to kill the man.
Right.
And so that's that. You know, I've been called to a what was a burglary in progress. Arrived at the house, and there's a gentleman trying to pull the door open when we arrived. We asked him, "Show us your hands. Show us your hands," and he refused. We had to approach him with the risk of us being shot, me and my partner, and we finally took him down. He was playing because he thought it was something funny. Now, if he had been shot, then it would have been like, oh, well, they just shot this black guy. 2 black cops shoot a black guy. Mm-hmm. But he refused to show us his hands. And we're called to a burglary, and you trying to get in the house when we get there.
A couple of things on that. What's interesting about that to me, Chris, is the fact that you didn't shoot him. which tells me that it's possible to de-escalate a situation without killing a citizen. That's number one. The second thing I want to address is the issue of race. I love American history, and I love the Civil War era. And sometimes I read the Confederate States of America, their Constitution, just to read it, because sometimes I get in debates about why the Civil War was fought. And it's somewhat offensive to African American who really knows history in America to say that we don't have a race issue, considering that a war was fought in this country over just that. The right to keep blacks as property, as chattel, like cows. That issue in and of itself, that sole issue, caused a war in this great country. And we're still suffering with some of the demons, if you will, the unsettled issues of the past. And I think one of the biggest problems that we face in this country is the fact that whenever we start talking about race, everyone gets very uncomfortable because no one wants to be considered a racist, and no one wants to be considered someone that judges another person based on their color. But we have to look, as Antjuan said, we have to look at the facts. We have to look at the history, and we have to look at the facts. And I think we have to look at the facts through the lens of history, a historic lens. And what we know in this country is that law enforcement, historically, especially in the South, has never been kind to African Americans. I mean, the first police departments, if you will, were slave patrols in the South to ensure that slaves, if they ran away from their plantations, were even brought back or made examples out of. So now I say that, but I don't say that with a negative lens on law enforcement. I say that with a historic perspective, because you're African American and you had the opportunity to be a law enforcement officer. We have African Americans in leadership in this city and around the nation. So I'm not against law enforcement officers, and I don't think anyone is against law enforcement officers just because they bring up the issue of race. But I think if we don't have a real discussion about why do these things exist, we will never get to the real problem.
And if we don't call a spade, we will continue having these conversations. No one can argue with every report that exists that ever been written in this country, the fact that black and brown kids are targeted more when it comes to traffic stop incidents, etc. No one can argue that the fact of sentencing reform is a reason it happened under the Obama administration because of the impact it had on black and brown communities. No one can argue the impact of the school-to-prison pipeline and what that has done. Those are statistical facts that's been proven by researchers, not Antjuan Seawright's Democratic opinion or whatever opinion. These are statistical researchers that have been done. That's why people wanted to fly the coop just a few weeks ago when the Justice Department under the racist Attorney General Jeff Sessions wanted to roll back Obama provisions that would give mandatory sentences for drugs. That's why people flew the coop, because they know what the system has been to people who look like me.
I got another one for you, just one that's interesting, that's recently been in the news. I used to be a former prosecutor, and there's some mandatory minimums for drug crimes, trafficking, crack cocaine, things of that nature, right? And everyone in this room, I think, is old enough to remember the crack epidemic in the late 80s and early 90s, New Jack City, and how many African-American men and women have been sentenced to very harsh prison sentences for crack cocaine. And what's interesting to me is that this heroin and opioid, quote-unquote, epidemic is something that's drawing a lot of compassion from the community. And I don't remember that same passion with crack babies and crack moms. And I think it's very interesting when you look at that. So one population is treated as a vulnerable population that really needs help. They need treatment. They need counseling. They need rehab. Whereas another population was sentenced to very, very harsh prison sentences. So you have to ask yourself the question, why? Why is that? And if there is a correlation between the races that these drugs are impacting.
Well, they also got to bring up the statistics of the fact that now we're pushing to legalize marijuana, but a lot of people who have charges that could lead up from 8 to 15 years off of possession, it was off of marijuana. And now, while they're legalizing it, they're not releasing any of these people who got the same charge.
They may, you never know. But I will say this now, just to even it out. And I'm not I'm not to be one for victim blaming at all, because it's not. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you got to understand, what is the defense of all these officers? The same exact defense. They all say the same exact thing.
I felt threatened.
I felt threatened.
Absolutely.
Right. Now, so you have to take we have to take a little bit of that because we want to fit, because our persona and what we have given off is that we are threatening.
Right.
That's been part of the
And
maturity.
I haven't given off any threats. I don't think.
I would like to just
Yeah.
talk about that, especially since I'm a white female. So I think that I bring a little bit of a perspective that's different from what has been talked about. First of all, it's devastating. Like, I can't watch it without crying. It's absolutely devastating, and I don't know how anybody can be like okay after watching it. But I think that when I did watch the cop and the interaction between just the car and the cop, it happened really fast. Okay, there was no time. The cop didn't tell him to not move anymore, so I can see where the man thought, oh, I'm still supposed to get my license and registration. And at the same time, because it happened so fast, I can also see where the cop is going, why, you just told me you have a gun. So since that happened so fast, I could see where the panic started for the cop, especially because we have to understand, because we're different, and if you are not surrounding yourselves with people that are different from you, we have experiences that cause us to have misconceptions, we
Right.
judge people
That's
because of the experiences that we've had in our past. Right or wrong, we all do it. And so because of that, I can see where maybe he had a really bad experience in the past that led him to automatically think, am I saying it was right? No, when I look at that, I think that the cop was probably not in the right when I watch it, okay? I'm just saying we all have experiences that cause us to react. Instead of saying, you are a person, a different person from anybody else I had experience with that may look like you. You are different. Just because you look similar doesn't mean you are similar. Does that make sense? Are you understanding where I'm coming from? Minus Antjuan. Because
Yeah, but but there's a way that you can make yourself look, Beth, to make yourself look threatening also. You see what I'm saying?
But Beth, there were two cops on the scene.
One was panicked.
One was on the left, on the driver's side.
Right.
The other was on the right. If at any point in time that cop felt extra threatened, he could have gave a signal, whatever law enforcement signal, to his other cop to act in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, let me stop you. I have been in situations like that where somebody has drawn a weapon. You don't have that kind of time.
No, I get that.
And, like I said, because I have been trained as a law enforcement officer, I have 21 years of experience. I've been in riots at the jail when I worked at the jail. And everybody can sit back and say, oh, well, you should have did this, you should have did that. When I was in a riot at the jail, you wasn't the one the knife was being swung at.
I agree.
So, it was like, well, you took the man down. I'm sorry. I had 2 kids at the house. I was going home. If he had broken bones, which thank God he didn't, for me to go home to my kids, hey, I'm sorry. But the fact is, it's real easy when you look at it to go, oh, well, he should have did this, he should have did that. But you only got a split second to make that decision.
That's why I don't put a lot of these incidences on the law enforcement officer, to be honest with you. The question becomes, what should a reasonable officer have done in that situation? And just like any other job, there's some law enforcement officers that are better than others. And so for me to hear you say that you saw, was it at night when that guy was trying to break into a house?
Yes, it was at night about 2:33 in the morning.
All right, so that's a felony in progress, all right? Burglary first. And you didn't shoot the guy. Okay? Now I'm not trying to compare you to the young man in Minnesota. All I'm trying to say is there are better ways. And it seems as if instead of trying to find better ways to police citizens, everyone takes a side. Blue versus everyone else.
Right.
Black Lives Matter versus Police Lives Matter. Blue Lives Matter.
Right.
And my position as a citizen is, wait a minute, everybody's life matters.
Correct.
So what are we doing to try to correct the problems, obvious problems that exist that cause law enforcement officers to kill citizens? I mean, I got to be honest with you. I'm in the Army, and we have, the law of armed conflict, the rule of war. Right. And to me, it seems as if there may be more concern and reservation when we're in a foreign country getting ready to exact violence on an enemy than it is for law enforcement officers
they're gonna hold you accountable
before they exact violence on a citizen in their own backyard.
Right.
It bothers me, and what bothers me a little bit more is that it seems as if that the country may not start to care until people who don't look like Mr. Castile are the victim.
And that's why, for me, it all goes back to surrounding yourself with people that are different from you. And I know that you're thinking, oh, well, you know, that shouldn't be enough. But we have to start somewhere. And so starting somewhere means getting out of your comfort zone, whatever experience that you've had before, pushing it aside and saying, I want to genuinely get to know you because you are a human just like me.
I think, you know, we're talking about two sides of one coin, right? We're talking about the role, like how law enforcement officers should approach a situation. We're talking about how people can basically make themselves not threatening, change their the crowd they hang with, etc. You know, how can they prevent? The real problem here is the legislation. Honestly, do you really think that? Like, I don't blame the law enforcement officers. They're just doing what their branch of government is required to do, enforce the law. Who's making these stupid laws, right? The problem is the laws, because the laws perpetuate the situations that get people killed or cause people to have to shoot other people. Like, I get it if we're talking serious crimes. That's why we have law enforcement. That's why we have government, the rule of government. But when we have stupid things like taxation, and when we have things like, you know, various drugs being made illegal, you know, we have all these stupid reasons for having law enforcement act, right? I'm talking about the whole coin. I'm not talking about, well, is it heads or is it tails? The whole coin is the problem. We need to change the whole coin with a nuanced perspective of what requires the role, like how much.
I mean,
so
I agree about like maybe for the headlight that's a little bit crazy, but like for drugs, let's not get
you can't
legislate.
Yeah, so putting politics aside for a second, I want you to understand, 60 years ago, Birth of a Nation came out. They actually painted an image of what the African-American man looks like to the average population. We're still stemming from situation from 60 years ago when this movie came out. 50 years ago, we just got our rights to vote. 40 years ago, the school just got desegregated. You're talking about, come on, man.
That ain't very long ago.
This is 60 years ago. So you telling me it's the government that's having these issues? Nah. At the end of the day, we're still dealing with prejudice that has been stemmed for over 250 years.
And let's not fool ourselves. The people making laws, the majority of them don't look like me.
Absolutely.
And that's one point. The second point is there's no way. While I have tremendous respect for you, your opinion, etc., but you can't legislate some of the stuff that's happening in our communities. Yeah. If you look at Tulsa, Oklahoma, you look at what happened you could look at what happened in Louisiana. Those are not legislative issues. You can't legislate. I'm gonna say this: you can't legislate crazy people.
Well,
I'm not gonna.
And
then the third part, going back to what Beth said. Beth, I agree with you. And it starts with community policing.
Yeah,
That's why my sheriff, my client Leon Lott, I have tremendous respect for him, because when he came to Richland County 20-something years ago, the department was a whole lot different. We would have been a Ferguson or a Minnesota or Louisiana had he not taken a different perspective to make sure, one, the department was diverse and looked like the community, but two, making sure community policing was a thing. So officers know the community in which they serve. They know when they go down. You did a ride along when you got hired by a solicitor's office. You know what to expect when you go down the Bluff Road and 48 at night. You know what certain communities to expect. And that makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, and I think one thing too I want to say, I think we also have to reward a job well done. One thing we're not talking about in this particular case is the fact that the grand jury issued a true bill. So there have been cases where there was no indictment. The young man up in New York, I think it was Long Island, I forget his name. He was choked out after selling
Eric Gardner.
They no-billed that indictment. So the police officers didn't even get a chance to go on trial. So I think you have to look at this and say, okay, well, at least here you have a district attorney's office and law enforcement, whoever, or whether it was a special prosecutor or special law enforcement that actually investigated the case, prepared the case for trial, and tried it. It was the citizens of that community that found that young man not guilty. And then you got to point to right here, Antjuan is talking about the sheriff of Richland County. You gotta give credit where credit is due with the solicitor's office here, because we had a very similar situation. I forget the gentleman's name, but somewhere off of Broad River Road, it was almost identical.
Right.
I think he fired just as many shots, but he wasn't as good of a shot as the gentleman in Minnesota. And that guy he pled guilty to A and B first, I believe. That's a felony offense. I think he's facing 10 years. So one thing we have to do, I think you have to look at this on a case-by-case basis. Thank you. And you have to remove emotion. Even though it's very emotional, you have to remove emotion and try to solve the problem. And one of my biggest issues with anyone, and Antjuan can probably speak more to this because he's in the political world, when citizens get upset about an issue but do not show up and vote, it's hard for me to take them seriously. Because we have the opportunity, and I know that you're a libertarian, my good friend here to the right of Antjuan. I respect all views, but whatever your view is, you need to vote. So if you're upset and you don't vote, then why should anyone take you seriously?
Well, Justin, not only you have to vote because elections have consequences, you got to show up for jury duty.
That too. I've seen so many people who tell all kinds of lies to get out of jury duty. I got a kid at home that nobody take care of him. I'm sick. And I've seen white people, black people, brown people, all types of people don't want to serve on juries because in South Carolina, I think you get maybe $5 a day. You're away from work. You're away from your family. It is duty. Please understand, it's duty. And sometimes these trials last a long time, but that's a part of being an American citizen. So if you want your community to be representative of your thoughts, beliefs, and ideas, then you have to be a participant in that system, and that includes jury duty.
Well, we are, as Americans, I mean, maybe even just in the whole world now, is very individualistic. And so we're not worried about, down the street a lot of times. So, and showing up for jury duty, that's part of being a community. And so they're like, oh, well, me being there doesn't affect anything. But we just need a change of perspective, a change of mindset.
that was big. When you said that clicked, because the whole thing is accountability. You know what I'm saying? The reason you're not going to just shoot random people in Iraq ain't going to play that. Right. You see what I'm saying? That's why. It ain't because of, they're not going to play that. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get held accountable. You know what I'm saying? So the situation is, but if you don't have enough judges, we can complain about the judges, we can complain about the lack of politicians. But if you're, you know what I'm saying, if we show up for jury duty, you know what I'm saying? Jury duty at least gives you a chance to hold people accountable from that position. And that's a start.
David, I want to go back to the elections point because maybe a lot of people don't know this. Number one, in South Carolina, we elect prosecutors called solicitors.
Right.
They make a lot of decisions. Justin, you're a former prosecutor in the Fifth Circuit. Dan Johnson, the first African-American to ever serve the Fifth Circuit, which is Richland and Kershaw County. We elect legislators in the House every 2 years, every 4 years. In South Carolina, we are one of very few states that still our judges are elected by the General Assembly. So that means our House and Senate members coming together to vote to decide who our judges are, from family court to the circuit court. Senators appoint magistrate judges. And so I say all that to go back to the point, elections genuinely have consequences on how some of these things turn out for families and communities.
And I guess sometimes that's hard to really understand what that really means if you've never been accused of a crime or a victim of a crime.
Right.
If you've never been accused of a crime or a victim of a crime, it's hard to really understand what does it mean to be treated fairly in the criminal justice system. And I've had to deal with both victims and both the accused. And one thing I appreciate about the Fifth Circuit is that we're charged, I was charged when I was a prosecutor to be a minister of justice. Justice is blind. It doesn't see a color. It doesn't see ethnicity. It doesn't see a gender. Justice sees the facts, and decisions are based on those facts. Well,
have we ever had justice, if that's the definition?
That's a rough one. That's coming from a cop, because we have arrested people, I mean, literally for burglary, and they out on the street before we get off shift. And
Well,
that's the sad part that we see as police officers. Like, are you serious?
We do have a constitution, and depending on what level of burglary they committed, if it was burglary first, then that can carry a life sentence. So bond should be or could be denied in that case. But if it was burglary second or burglary third, the Constitution requires a bond. So I think I'm glad you brought that point up, because I think the understanding of an idea of what justice is to most American citizens is not reflective of the documents that control justice. So if you're not knowledgeable of the system and how it is supposed to work, then you may see that and get frustrated. Well, once you make that case, sir, or if you're a line deputy, then it goes to an investigator. The investigator does their job. The line deputy, if you make the arrest, that goes to the investigator. There's going to be a bond hearing. And then it's going to be a first appearance, a second appearance, a third appearance. Then it may be a plea, or it may be a trial, or it may not, or a grand jury may no bill it and find that it wasn't probable cause for the arrest. But however it works out, there is a process.
Right.
There's a system that has to play itself out, and a lot of times it may not seem fair to the accused, because it's tough being charged with a crime now, because your life is going to be altered. But on the same end, it's tough being the victim of a crime. Someone has broken into my car, stole my gun, stole my iPad, and I was very, very frustrated and upset with that. So I think, again, for me, it goes back to understanding the system, participating in the system, so that we can create the community that we want. Because to sit back here and not be a participant and judge that young man in Minnesota, or judge anyone for that matter, and not do anything to try to make the system better, they're empty words, in my opinion.
And one thing that, I'm going to bring some perspective that most people at this table probably have no clue. Police officers really don't get paid that much. Most of these guys work basically 2 jobs. They work their regular 12-hour shift. A lot of them then go work another 4 hours just to make ends meet, get a few hours of sleep, and come back and do it all over again. And so, like I said,
and they got their own set of problems.
Yeah, they got family problems. They got,
like
with their kids. I mean, so you're dealing with a person a lot of times. I mean, because like when you did when we did our Friday, Saturday, Sunday, by Sunday you worn out. You've worked, 24 hours in 2 days, and then you got to go home. If when I had little kids and the kids running around, daddy this, and you ain't got no sleep.
Yeah.
So by Sunday night, stuff happened. You like, Lord, just get me through. I only got 4-5 more hours, and then you roll up on somebody with a gun. You're already kind of off, because you haven't had sleep. And so, like I said, a lot of times we sit in an office job and we talk about, well, the cop shouldn't have did this and the cop shouldn't have did that. Put on his uniform.
Right.
Until and I've worked murders, and you go from that murder to helping somebody out in the car, to a traffic stop, to telling some kids, hey, y'all need to get off the street. And officers go through emotions like people, like veterans. Right. Guys who've been in Vietnam, I've never been in war. I was in the military, but I've never been to war. But on the street, I've been to war. Because you see so much. And that's one of the things. I mean, it's real easy to sit back and point the finger at the officers. And I'm not justifying that officer. I'm not saying he was wrong. I'm not saying he was right. But I'm saying from the perspective of somebody who's been in that patrol car, who stopped somebody 2:00 in the morning on 601 who had a gun.
Well, let me ask you this question: I would pay more taxes if I had to pay more taxes to ensure that my law enforcement.
We're getting close to that.
That my law enforcement is better paid, better trained, and it would prevent the likelihood of someone being killed. I would pay more taxes as an African American citizen. But here's the thing: does everyone feel that way?
No,
because you have some segments of the population will say, well, we ain't getting shot. Well, I guess that's y'all need to figure that out.
Well, Justin, they have so many vacancies at the city of Columbia right now, and you can attribute it to many things, but really and truthfully, everything I've heard is because of the pay.
Yeah.
Because of the pay of the officers.
It's because we've got a government so big, so dependent on taxing and thieving from people's wallets, trying to control and enact so many laws that are unnecessary and control every minuscule bit of our lives, that they're running ragged. that it's doing what government does best, which is do the worst at governing.
But here's the thing: how are we going to pay for these officers?
yeah.
Government has a role. Government has a role in people's
Have them
lives.
do less.
And then what? More people get shot. More
Well, no, it's not have them do less. It's have them better manage the funds. Because again, the people who on the ground get paid the least amount of work. The line officer gets paid the least amount of money.
Well, hold on. I got to give a shout out because I ain't gonna lie. I'm enjoying Diana Troy on the Facebook Live. If anybody, if you're watching the replay, yeah, Diana Troy is going in. Shouts out. So I mean, her response was, "So what? Some people work minimum wage in fast food places, and we expect proper service."
Correct.
That's true.
And I agree with that. But I don't think nobody in fast food is carrying a gun.
Right.
And they're charged with, because see, here's the other
They
thing.
make more than minimum wage too, though.
Right, but here's the other thing. How many officers have gone to robberies and they get shot at? You don't hear, officer been shot at. You don't hear all of those things. And these officers still, they're people too. And so I'm not, like I said, I'm not justifying. I'm not saying he was right. I'm not saying he was wrong. I didn't see what he saw. I wasn't the front. I wasn't the officer in the front. I didn't see what the guy reached for, So I don't know. I was not there.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Do
go
you not think, though, now, granted, I hear your point, and it's well made. But the young man was not convicted. And I do think that the jury took everything or a lot of the things that you're saying into consideration and found him not guilty.
Right.
Right. And here's I don't know, man. It's like from what you're saying though, if that's what gives them the leniency, that means every woman with 5 kids and a job can shoot anybody.
No.
Because they stressed. I'm just saying. What he's saying, what you're saying is the stress of the job should give him leniency. The stress of the job should give him leniency. The stress of a situation should give him leniency.
No, I'm not saying that.
What is where does the leniency come from for a police officer where he gets more leniency than anybody else who has a very stressful life?
I don't believe we should be given more leniency, but I'm saying that when you sit back and you look at this video video did not see inside of that car. Everybody draws an opinion, oh, this officer, it was murder, it was murder. Do you see what he saw? That's my only question. Until you see what his eyes saw, it's real hard to make.
And that's what it's hard, but it's hard to say because he's trying to say what he's seeing. What he said at the scene didn't even match the situation.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
So I mean, I wouldn't even. So that doesn't even.
I don't think that argument works if he panicked. If he panicked, he can't even tell you what he saw.
Thank you. And most traumatic people who suffer from traumatic instances, they literally tell them, come back and let us know
then how do you
the
get
next
justice? Day,
because there's so many things that happen so fast. I mean, I was in a situation, a guy just threw a punch at me. I mean, I don't even know the guy was standing in front of me. Next thing I know, was a fist in my face. Because I was trained with hand-to-hand combat, I was able to take him down. But the fact is, I don't even remember him swinging. All I know is when I saw his fist was right there.
Are there certain personality types that should have certain jobs?
I believe so.
I
believe so.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So take it there. So start with how you choose the people that go through the training. Is the training effective, and are the laws that protect the citizen effective as compared to the training? All three seem like a no, right? So then that's something fixable, isn't it?
It's
perhaps
fixable.
Feel free to think freely.
All I can tell you is this: in every job, most of them anyway, there's always training and then there's retraining.
Right.
And we have to get to a place, going back to government, because I believe government has this role to make sure we are constantly retraining our officers to fit the needs of the community they serve. That's number one. Number two, I know we're running short on time, Ebony.
Oh, no, keep going. We good.
I don't want to do two.
Number two, for every officer who puts on that uniform every day on the front line, thank you for your service.
Absolutely.
Because without you, we would not be here. There are some crazy people in the world.
And there are some amazing cops.
And so thank you. Number
Most
three,
of them.
for every citizen who may be listening, who may be impacted by the system, keep in mind that this is not the first time this happened, and it's going to happen again. But that don't mean we shouldn't stop fighting. I think we should advocate for what we know is right. I think we should fight like crazy to make sure you're right, change some of the laws in the system that may work against certain communities versus others.
Right.
But we got to keep fighting. We got to keep going. And third and lastly, I pray for every family who's lost their child of color or any child to any type of shooting, but particularly to those by an officer.
Okay, so here's a question, and I guess we need to keep the answer in 3 minutes less. But I can't do this show and not ask that question. Okay, scared parents, scared people who are afraid in their community because this is happening. This is a reality. It's not just hypothetical. You know what I'm saying? No, this is in the community today.
Right.
What is their first step? Because that's what most of them just sitting there helpless. Matter of fact, I was on a radio show here in a local radio show here, and a person called in and asked that question. And it was a toughie. They was like, "So what do we do? We're helpless."
Well, I think that though, as African American though, I think now I'm from a small town in South Carolina where, at a very early age, I was told how to operate in public. Okay, how to deal with people, and I think as African Americans, it's a bit disingenuous, in my opinion, to say we don't know what to do after we've gotten through slavery, we've gotten through Jim Crow, we got through the civil rights. There used to be times where blacks were getting lynched, right? So, and thank God we're not there anymore. But we know how to operate.
Some places we are,
right? Well, some places we still are. We can't operate as if we're not a target. As a black man, I embrace the fact that when I get pulled over, if I get pulled over by law enforcement, that I could die. I embrace that. So what do? I take that interaction very seriously.
Right.
Okay. I do what you do. Hands on the steering wheel. Inside light on. I talk to the officer very calmly and very nicely. I may have to endure some disrespect. I haven't. Every law enforcement officer I've dealt with has been very respectable and very professional. But as black folks, we know how to survive. But I think sometimes we want to tell the man how we feel, and then the man acts like the man, and we get upset.
Yep, gotcha. And that happens more times than you ever.
You know, just to make sure I'm hearing you right, you mean you make sure in every instance you dot your I's
and cross my T's.
Absolutely,
every
double
time,
right?
Every time, right?
Double time.
I have been stopped in another county, and he said, "You know the reason I stopped you, boy." Mm-hmm. Now I'm sitting here like, I ain't gonna lie to you. That man in me wanted to rise up and be like, "Oh, you don't know who you're dealing with." But I also recognize even. Because he's
got the power.
Yeah. Right. And I still had my badge. I still had my gun. But I nicely kept my hands on the steering wheel and said, "No, sir." Because I understood in that situation, no matter what happened, I was going to lose.
The good news is in South Carolina, thanks to Senator Marlon Kempson, who was the senator from Charleston that introduced legislation when Walter Scott happened, and thanks to Clemente Pinckney, my friend who I lost because a racist white boy shot up 9 people in the church. He gave the floor speech that moved people to make sure South Carolina was the first state in the union to have body cameras. And so a lot of the stuff that once happened before that people didn't know about, they can now see it firsthand because of body cameras. And so I thank God for that. And going back to Justin's point, and this will be my last point, I think as an African-American man or female, we have to do double in all instances. When people say dress casual, we got to put on
a suit.
Okay, I'm gonna be in trouble.
I know I will. I don't wear suits.
Police stop us, and other people can casually get away with your hands down by your side. We
can't do that. No.
Right.
Yeah.
When they say you need to be clean cut, we can't go in with a goatee. We need to be face shaved. That kind of thing. We have to do double, and that's been our history. And unfortunately, the way we're going in this country, that is currently our situation. And quite frankly, that may be our destiny until the end of time.
Well, I hope that's not the case, but I think the trouble is, because I speak to a lot of kids, and the trouble is, after the election of President Obama, I think we got into our minds that we finally made it, and equality is here, and that's just not the case yet. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't come. And when we talk about race, and when I talk about race, I'm not angry. It is what it is. I want to survive. I want to thrive. When I have children, I want them to do the same. All my brothers and sisters, I want to thrive and survive. But if we pretend as if that we have arrived and we won't get treated differently, you may end up dead.
We're crazy as spray. You crazy as spray roach.
And that not everybody is like that. When white privilege is talked about, not everybody believes that is how it should be. Just because you're white doesn't mean that that I believe or that's how it should be.
There is a type of white person that gets harassed by police officers. I absolutely know that. Yeah, Will fits the description of the ones that I know.
That's being real.
Right, it's being real.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, you know, when you said, you know, dot your I's and cross your T's, that's for everybody.
Right.
The thing is, like, we teach a class about how to interact with police. And the first thing is, do what the officer says. If he says stop reaching, stop reaching.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not threatened if your hands are on the steering wheel, palms open, because he knows you can't shoot him with your feet unless you got some skills we don't know of.
Unless you're next to this disabled guy like the guy was in Florida.
Yeah.
And with his hands up.
And that's one thing too, though, that, and I don't know when the time is going to end. we try to backseat quarterback what citizens should do in their interactions with police, and it always seems like the adversary comes up with another situation where the citizen did everything right,
Absolutely,
and still got killed.
The bar keeps getting pushed forward.
And so at some point, the kids are going to start asking, well, and a young lady, I think she was 14, said this at a Jack and Jill conference this past weekend in Charlotte, where I spoke with Major Pearsall from the Charlotte Mecklenburg County Police Department, and she just said, "Why do they hate the black people so much?" And we were trying to talk about interactions with police. We were showing some videos, and I think her frustration was, it doesn't matter what I do. There may be a time, because of the color of my skin, that I won't be treated fairly. And she just wanted to know why.
I'm glad you brought that up. I do want to say this to my white brothers and sisters that might be watching this show later on. A lot of black people have come up with the reality have come to the conclusion of the reality that sometimes they have to tell their children to act a certain way. You won't have to tell your children to act.
Act like you're being robbed. Basically.
Yeah, always act. Always do what they say. Comply. And yes, I hate hearing the idea of comply now. I hate that because every time I've heard somebody, why didn't they comply? Well, what is complying now? What is complying? Complying has completely been demolished. Now compliance is up here. They can comply every level, and it seems like compliance always get pushed further. Look, you don't have the same reality a lot of times that we do, and we're not hating you for that. We're just saying,
and that's not. Unfortunately, that hasn't been everybody's reality.
Right.
So.
I just want to throw this out there before we leave. You brought up a good point, Jay Will. You know John Purvis. I was talking to him one day, and he and his wife were thinking about adopting a black baby, and he actually asked me. We had the conversation one day. This was when this whole, black people being killed by cops on a regular basis thing got really first started getting out of hand. He said that they had to rethink the whole idea because he realized, I'm going to have to teach my black son as a white man how to do things that I don't have to teach my other two white children.
Yeah, and that's
sad.
And so, I just want to say that the fact that he had to think about that is a problem. B, that problem stems from the fact that unfortunately, a lot of times, black people, specifically black men, are portrayed as being the more vigilant, the more violent, the more aggressive. And sure, there may have been cases in the past where that's been true, but I think part of that is because of the portrayal. It's not. I don't think it's been out of any idea that, we just want it to be that way. I think it's because the portrayal has been given, and for some people, they think that that's all that they have. That's all that they can be. And I also think that a big part of the solution is really coming to a point where we really start being intentional about moving past and looking past stereotypes in every way possible. I'm not saying that everybody's going to be able to get the benefit of the doubt. That's too difficult to be able to, But we have to be able to start somewhere and look. I got in a car accident in 2013. I was in the hospital. I got hit by a drunk driver. I was in the hospital waiting in the waiting room, and a cop pulled me to the side, asked if he could speak to me. And he seemed a little, on edge slightly or whatever, but, just sort of cautious of me. And he took my license and registrations and whatnot and asked me why I was in the hospital. And he went and ran my information, and he came back and brought my license back to me and said, okay, you're good. Just, you look like somebody I was looking for. that in itself, he may not have been intentionally trying to be racist or anything like that, but that sort of situation, that bothered me because I was already taught to be cautious of police officers. Unfortunately, not every black person is. Obviously, that's something that's something that, yes, we think should be obvious to all black people, but unfortunately, it's not, because you have black people that have grown up in an era right now where you think that shouldn't be a problem. So some of us don't realize that. And me being in that situation, that bothered me a lot. And now I'm even more paranoid of police officers. And that's a problem. So I think until we can get to a point where, like I said, he was probably just doing his job. I'm not saying he was being racist, but I am saying that once part of the solution is starting to look past stereotypes and actually trying to talk, have an actual conversation first.
One other thing, let me say this. I'm not going to paint the picture that there is no racism in law enforcement, because that's a lie. There is. That's the heart of those people. But not every cop is that way.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so
exactly.
The thing is, as a citizen or anybody, if you're stopped, at least do what the officer says. Don't give them a reason to think you're up to something that you're not.
Right.
Because that's, from what I've seen, a lot of times that has been the issue, because, I've stopped. Oh, you gonna shoot me? Dude, really? And now all of a sudden it changes. What would have been a simple conversation, hey, how you doing? Because we're just doing foot patrol. Now your comment leads me to believe something else is going on that could have been just avoided just by, just the other night we were, or when I say other night, it's been, a while, but working with a police officer on crime suppression for, there were a lot of vehicles that had been broken in. Guys in the neighborhood where the problem's happening, 3 o'clock in the morning, walking up the street. What you doing out here? I just leaving work. Where do you work at? I'm a brick mason. Dude, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You was laying bricks, really? That right there is suspicious. Right. And then let's see your ID, identify who you are. We'll let you on your way. For 20 minutes, he raising Cain. Finally, after I guess he didn't got all his rocks off, tells us who he is. Thank you. Have a nice day. We just want to verify who you are.
I think too, though, for certain populations deal with certain things that cause them to have stress and anxiety about certain encounters. Just like law enforcement has that same stress and anxiety. I think some folks, African American males, they have anger that they don't know what to do with because of the way they've been treated. And that is something that they need to find a way to deal with, because giving it to the police is not the answer.
Right.
Being disrespectful to the police is not the answer.
Right.
You may have anger issues. You may have frustration issues with how your life is here in America, but complaining about it to the police or being disrespectful is not the answer. Everyone has problems.
Right.
We all have problems. And I appreciate Beth for putting it out there. If we really want to work toward a better community, we have to hang out with people who are different than us.
Yes.
And try to have an open mind and understand those differences, as opposed to being so closed and angry and upset and frustrated, but unwilling to open up and try to figure out where some of these problems coming from. How can I learn from you? How can you learn from me? And how can we work together to have a better community? Because if we are unwilling to work together, we are doing nothing for ourselves.
You mean the whole wheat and the light bright bread should all hang together?
And on that,
Antjuan, bad.
I learned about seasoned salt. Seasoning
Seasonings.
One of my friends taught me how to fry chicken.
Yes, we come to the house for the fried chicken.
I am not making it for you. You can make it at my house.
And we watching Coming to
Don't
America.
worry about it. We got you, Beth. We're gonna watch Coming to America while eating your fried chicken.
That's right. Y'all spread peace and love, y'all.
Hey, absolutely. Now, I think we started the conversation really good. I'll be honest with you. I just realized like halfway through the show, I was like, dude, this is like a 3-part. We gonna do this one time. I mean, we just can't keep revisiting that part of it.
Yeah.
But Brother Seawright, we need to know what's going on in the State House about getting this, making sure this doesn't seep its way here. Because bad relationships, a bad relationship is the fault of all in that relationship.
Right.
So So we have to fix it from all angles. So yes, we have to change the stereotypes. Police have to change those stereotypes in their mind.
Yep.
And we have to change the stereotypes in ours.
Right.
And so we've talked about a lot of things, but we're gonna have to get in this table and really be.
But David, it's not just the state house. It's the city PD.
Right.
It's the county PD. It's the troopers on the road. We've got to be connected. The dots have to be connected all the way around.
You mean the whole ballot counts?
There you go. If you don't believe me, look at who we have occupying the White House and who he appointed as Attorney General and what they've done so far. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
Absolutely. Till next time, y'all. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Love,
My goodness.
hair grease.
And shouts out to design. That
sorry.
Seattle mom thing was gonna take us way somewhere else. So we that might be later. It might be something later. Till next week, y'all. Feel free to think freely.
Feel free to think freely. Deuce.
Free.
Shout out.
Sweet Jesus.
I love all y'all.
Are we?
I don't really care what you think about me.